It's a big day for us. We are unveiling Tessl. We're launching Tessl's product, and it's exciting. We've been building this for quite a while. And if you're using agents to develop, then you've probably seen that agents are powerful, but they're also unreliable. So you would ask them for something, that go off and they rush to start coding the first solution that comes to mind. And oftentimes that would be the wrong thing. For some people, they just can't get into agentic development because of this blocker. And so we think we can address many of these problems through specs and spec-driven development. That's what both of our products are trying to solve.
What are the two products that we're releasing?
The first one is the Tessl Framework, and that is really a spec-driven development framework. The second product is the Tessl Spec Registry. In practice, even the same person in the same company for certain tasks, sometimes you want to create the spec, review the spec, ensure that what you mean to build, that your intent is well captured, that the test cases represent what you want, and you're willing to invest that time because you have enough opinions and it's important enough, or maybe unique enough, it's rules of some new game. And the Tessl Framework supports that, and it's very easy and natural to do it. And then once you have defined those, you send the agent off to build, and you have those guardrails so the agent can work more autonomously until it gets it right.
Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to let you know that this podcast is for developers building with AI at the core. So whether that's exploring the latest tools, the workflows, or the best practices, this podcast's for you. Now, we've had amazing guests like Olivier Pamel, the CEO of Datadog, Matti Stanisowski, the co-founder of 11 Labs, Victor Riparbelli, the CEO and co-founder at Synthesia, and of course, Tessl's very own Patrick Dubois, and they're all sharing lessons right from the frontier of our industry. A really quick ask, 90% of people who are listening to this haven't yet subscribed. So if this content has helped you build smarter, hit that subscribe button and maybe a like. It really does help us keep bringing the folks who are actually pushing this space forward and helping build that AI native future. All right, back to the episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the AI Native Dev. And this is a pretty special episode.
Indeed.
Joining me as regular host is regular host Gaipo.
Yeah, thanks for coming on to the show, Simon.
It's my pleasure. So who's interviewing? I'll interview you. That's probably the big
Let's just improvise and see where it goes.
So yeah, Guy, it's a special occasion. What's the special occasion?
Yeah, it is. It's a big day for us. We are unveiling Tessl. We're launching Tessl's products, which we'll talk a fair bit about. And it's exciting. We've been building this for quite a while. So we can't wait to tell you more about it.
Yeah. And so it's available right now on Tessl.io. So go ahead, have a play, see what we got. But Guy, why don't you tell us, what are we launching?
Sure. So we're launching two products, actually. Sort of can't, named it twice. Yeah, it's like, why one? Why choose? So actually, in general, they're both in the world of spec-driven development. We'll talk more about that. But the first one is the Tessl Framework, which is a solution that integrates into your agent and helps it start developing in this sort of spec-driven approach, as we'll explain. And the second is the Tessl Spec Registry, which helps agents use open source better and expands into generally distributing information through specs to agents about everything that's not in their code base. So both products together are to us a part of what is spec-driven development. And yeah, we'll sort of explain about both. But as Simon pointed out, we're going to blabber here a little bit and explain more about it. But if you're keen to try them out, just check out Tessl.io and start playing with the tools.
Yeah. 2 minutes into this episode, you might as well stop now and just go and try it out.
Consider your life choices.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about every good solution guy has a pain. Well, some I always used to laugh at when people said blockchain. Oh yeah, that's a solution looking for a problem, right? Tell me what the problem is that we're trying to solve here at Tessl, but also AI&D and things like that is trying to solve.
Sure. So we have the meta problem that is semi-problem, semi-opportunity that I think you've heard us talk about a fair bit, which is that software today is code-centric, and that in that code we forget what we wanted the product built for in the first place, and that we think there's an opportunity to change to this spec-driven development world in which your software is defined through its specs. But that's the vision, that's the destination. But the more concrete problem we're talking about now and we're trying to tackle is around agentic development. And if you're using agents to develop, then you've probably seen that agents are powerful, but they're also unreliable, and they're definitely overconfident, right? So you would ask them for something, that go off and they rush to start coding the first solution that comes to mind. And oftentimes that would be the wrong thing, or they misunderstood you and you find yourself needing to fix it after the fact. Or they would make things up, right? They would say they're done when they're not really. Like they say, hey, I fixed the problem. Or like, 59 out of 75 tests pass. I think I'm good. It's like, no, you're not. And sort of similarly, they hallucinate information that is outside. They hallucinate APIs. They hallucinate whole libraries sometimes. And all of those really culminate as you try to build bigger and bigger. And so you use the agents, you wrangle them, you review them, and you get them to a safe spot. And then you add the feature and they break something else. And so all of those are sort of this reliability problems that mean that if you're using agents, you are in this perpetual review motion. You are just trying to understand what have they done? Was it correct? Review the products and the outputs. And when you encounter a problem or something that was incorrect, it's really hard to fix things in hindsight, because you kind of need to go back. How far back do I go? Do I revert to the changes altogether? And I think this is the biggest pain that people using agents today experience. For those who stick to it and build with agents, it's, they have to build their techniques, and it's the challenge they face day to day is, how do I minimize the amount of reviewing that I need to do and get these agents just to do what I need them to do. And for many people, it's actually a blocker. They can't get into agentic development because the systems are just too reliable. These agents are just too unreliable let me sort of say this. For some people, they just can't get into agentic development today at all because of this blocker. The systems and these agents are just too unreliable to use them in a professional setting. Yeah. And so we think we can address many of these problems through specs and spec-driven development. And that's what both of our products are trying to solve.
It's super interesting. And I mean, for me personally, I guess two of the pains which really spring to mind for me is I start coding with agents and you feel that magic. You feel that kind of like the true vibe coding nature of I give it a little, I get a lot back. But then as soon as the app gets to almost like this certain size where it has an amount of functionality and capability, there's almost like you hit this ceiling whereby exactly what you kind of like referred to, well, I change one bit and a whole bunch of other things change. Even if I've actually already specified this is how I want that to work, it almost neglects some of my previous comments, even though that is part of the context from the original conversation, and so forth. It makes it almost like you can't continue with the agent because it becomes more work to kind of keep it on track, and I think that becomes a huge pain. The other problem that I have is sometimes you get to this stage where you actually have to almost give up, and you have to say almost like I have to start again. It's got itself in such a knot. I can't continue down this path, and these are the limitations of the vibe coding way, which actually almost like a blocker from going into that kind of more into that actual enterprise-like production style level of reliable code. So yeah, I think these are like super important and common pain points that both we and most of the world who have been using AI have suffered and feel day-to-day basis. What are the two products then that we're releasing?
So two products, both very exciting. The first one is the Tessl Framework, and that is really a spec-driven development framework that connects to your agent via MCP. So we support all the agents that support it, and guides it to capture its intent in specs before it builds. Right? So you come along and you give it an instruction, whatever, build me a to-do app or whatever it is. And before it jumps into code, it first creates a spec, thanks to using Tessl's tools and thanks to Tessl's guidance, to say what is it that it wants to build in a quick and easy to understand format, and then it goes off to build it. And have you had a case where you ran along or you gave an instruction and the agent rushed and they ended up building the wrong thing?
It's not just daily, maybe hourly when I use agents, and it's I guess a twofold thing. One where I either give it an instruction and it hasn't quite understood exactly what I meant, and it's because I love to short prompt because I get value and speed out of short prompting. The other, of course, is where I ask it for a small change in a larger app, and it actually then goes ahead and starts changing other pieces,
which expands it of the app.
Oh gosh, it's frustrating.
So that's the first goal, is separate intent from implementation and capture what it means to build in a spec. And then once you are comfortable with the intent and with what has been built, and you're happy with it, then Tessl offers you an easy way to now generate tests with sort of a single command. And this is done because the spec is actually designed upfront to be built with a lot of test cases in mind that serve as examples when you initially generate. But then those are sort of the key definitions to go off and create tests. And the agent needs to work a little bit harder to be able to generate those tests. It needs to set up a test environment, sometimes iterate, but it does it quite autonomously. And once it works, those serve as regression tests. And so now you know that it would not do, as you mentioned before, you make a change and then it goes off and it breaks something else.
Yeah. And that kind of like leads into whether you prefer to do a test-driven, tests up front kind of phase, or whether you want to do that innovation and creation first, and then once you're happy with what you have, do tests later. And I think there's never a right or a wrong answer. It massively depends on either organization or individual preference of how they want to build. But you have both solutions with that same centricity over the specification.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no, we went a lot of back and forth on like, do we want to be opinionated about one versus the other? But in practice, even the same person in the same company for certain tasks, sometimes you want to create the spec, review the spec, ensure that what you mean to build, that your intent is well captured, that the test cases represent what you want, etc. And you're willing to invest that time because you have enough opinions and it's important enough, or maybe unique enough, it's rules of some new game or whatever it may be. And so then you want to invest that time. And the Tessl Framework supports that, and it's very easy and natural to do it. And then once you have defined those, you sort of send the agent off to build, and you have those guardrails so the agent can work more autonomously until it gets it right. But the other mode that we've started calling vibe speccing is also legit, right? And as we've heard Ollie from Datadog, the CEO and founder of Datadog, tell us in a previous episode, the biggest lie that customers tell you is that if it's important, they'll invest the time. And in practice, what we see on ourselves and on our users is that oftentimes people just want to get to working code as quickly as possible. And so this vibe speccing mode is one in which you don't create the tests up front. You don't really know what it is that you want. So you just flow with it. You allow the agent to make the decisions as you did before. You're just now capturing those decisions in these different documents. So it's easy for you to proceed. And even if you've done that, those regression tests still serve as a guardrail for future evolutions of it. So even if you went the casual mode, you still get some extra protection.
Yeah. And ultimately you get the same thing at the end of the day. You have your code, you have those tests that make sure that the code that's generated satisfies the specification, and the specification, really importantly, still holds all the intents. Whether you go tests first, whether you go tests after, it's not opinionated in such a way.
Exactly. You can now continue, and you have something you actually didn't have before in software development as a whole, which is you now have this long-term memory as the specs get committed to your code base of what your product should do. Which we actually don't really have in software development today. We have, docs or such, but because they are not the source, they're not the file through which changes get applied, then they oftentimes fall out of date, as we all know.
Not that dusty PRD down in the basement you're talking about.
Exactly. Right? It's not these sort of fragmented requirements, nor even sort of user docs. And so you have these specs, and the specs capture your intent over time, and you can keep coming back to them, and it's an easy way to manage tests and relate them to the product. And so the true, maybe biggest value of the Tessl Framework actually comes as you continue building and continue evolving, because you have these specs as part of your code base and defining what your product should do. What the framework also does is it helps you ensure, again, with minimal effort, that they are always up to speed. Whenever we can, we end up modifying files through the spec. When you call an edit, you call the Tessl edit tool, and that modifies the spec first and then modifies the code. And when the agent misbehaves, or when you had some good reason to change a code file or a test file, we have means of detecting that and going back and updating the spec. And so we really try to make it as seamless as possible to always keep the specs up to date and to ensure that changes get applied through the specs, really allowing you to sort of scale and grow. And we think that the more information gets captured in the specs over time, the more you can tap into the creative power, if you will, of the LLM, or the ability to try many, many different things and try to make code that is faster, that is, adaptable to change something from, a Python environment to a TypeScript to a Java, and not need to worry that your functionality breaks in the process. So a lot of value upfront as you create, but really probably the biggest treasure trove is as you grow.
Yeah, and these specs really build up to the life cycle of the application, right? They just stay with the tests, with the code all the way through, and continually you as a user are focusing more on the specification than anything else.
Yeah. And that's a very important clarification, because I think in the industry today, we use specs for various purposes, I think, in the sort of nascent agentic dev world. And for many people, specs are about a transition from point A to point B, from state A to state B. That's not how we think of specs. We do create plans as a natural part of the Tessl usage, and those plans are indeed their life cycle or lifespan is the lifespan of the change. Mm-hmm. But the specs are really about the definitive document that describes functionality, and their lifespan is the lifespan of your code base.
Yeah, amazing. So product one, the Tessl Framework, the ability to create using a spec-driven approach, spec-driven development approach. You mentioned about agents being a little bit dodgy, a little bit wary sometimes. Tell us a little bit about product two and how that kind of like helps keep these agents in the rails.
Sure. So the second product, which I'm very excited about, is the Tessl Spec Registry. Going back a little bit to the pain point, I think what you see with agents is sometimes they don't know something and they don't know, or as I said,
the story of my life. I'm basically an agent.
They're kind of overconfident. I'm going to let that slide.
No. I feel seen now.
So the most evident version of that is when they use an API, a third-party API or an open source library API. If you're using something that is like straight up in the mainstream and they know, they're amazing at it. If you're using something that's a little bit off, or using a slightly older version of a popular library, or even more, if you're using a new version that didn't exist yet when those models were trained, typically what the agents would do is they would just make it up as they go. And they would use, false APIs or flawed one. And sometimes they would just really get stuck in that mode, and they would just sort of waste time and money trying to get there and never get out of it. And sometimes they would eventually figure it out, but it was, time-consuming, costly, and they oftentimes are left with a slightly messy implementation. And have you experienced things like that?
So much. And it's particularly because, AI is great at when it looks at when it trains on a huge amount of open source libraries with tons of different versions on there. When things, and I'm talking about the Java world here, but when things progress over years and years and years and years, there are so many API changes from different libraries whereby the most popular is really the one it's going to be trained on. And I'm not always using the most popular because I sometimes run on an old stack, or I'm sometimes bleeding edge with some of the things I'm using. And it's not just as much a hallucination as it is I'm assuming this is the version you're running on without actually using the correct context to build against when generating my app. Huge problem.
Precisely. And so this is really a kind of a context problem, right? They don't have the right information at the right time. Sometimes because they literally do not have the info, like a brand new library version. Sometimes because sort of a less statistically significant bit of information. Yeah. And sometimes it's indeed information that there's no way for them to have, like your team's specific best practices or context. And so what we believe and enable with the Spec Registry is to make that knowledge a part of your project. So we introduce a new dependency system that the Spec Registry enables, and that is a dependency system for knowledge, for specs. You would have a new manifest file in your project that references certain spec packages of specs with the right information to be able to work on this code base. More specifically for open source, we have pre-populated the registry with over 10,000 usage specs, which are we generated them by analyzing the code of specific versions of libraries and additional information about those libraries of usage online. That is all version aware, and we package them up in these easy to consume kind of nuggets of knowledge for the agent. So these are markdown files with the right sections. They are split up into multiple files so the agent can load the right thing at the right time. And so let's say you're using some library at version old, then the agent will, you will add that. You would use Tessl Registry search to find the usage spec. It will be added to your manifest file, and those usage specs will be downloaded to your project, just like node modules or other dependencies. And then using Tessl tools, and even natively, the agent can then find them and use the information correctly. And you know that this information is there. It is correct for your specific project. It is kind of always available to all the agents. You're not dependent on them realizing they need to go seek it out or misunderstanding it. And as your software stack changes or as your practices change, so does the information that you make available to the agents.
And it's important to raise that distinction between the spec that you kind of like referred to earlier, where we're creating a specification using the Tessl framework. And that specification allows agents to create code. It's effectively a blueprint of, this is how I want you to build my application. The usage spec that you're referring to is quite different. It's telling the agent how I should use these various libraries or components so I can code against them. It kind of reminds me, I don't know how well this will travel to our listeners, but the Haynes manual for cars. It's like the book that kind of like tells you every little bit about how a component works in a car. It's great to understand how every single component could work and can work, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how to drive the car. I wouldn't look at that in order for me to, be able to use a car correctly. That's the usage that I need. And so if you go in just understanding how a library can do things, what APIs are available and so forth, that only gives me half a story. It doesn't actually tell me how I should use it, examples, best practices. That's a key distinction which usage specs here give us.
Correct. And I think we talk a lot about what is what should be in the spec, and specs can hold many things, and we find ourselves now defining a type, a functional spec versus a usage spec. Eventually, when we think about spec-driven development and spec-driven, spec-centric software, then we oftentimes all of these will be part of the software package itself, because when you are creating a library, the information that you need to be able to regenerate that library again and again, for instance, that might be more of a functional spec, it might be a bit more technical, but understanding that library, both for the consumer and for future developers, actually starts looking a lot more like a usage spec. So at the moment we are, there isn't much software out there that is defined by specs. And so we are creating these kind of docs for agents, for software that has been built in a code-centric fashion. And we make it accessible in a very kind of agent friendly way, right? With a good AX, so that they can consume it and make it a part of that project, a dependency system for knowledge. And again, we've kind of spent some inference dollars so you don't have to make this information available to you. So you can install it now and just make it, make your agents use open source better. But we think conceptually, there's more information that needs to be made available to agents than just usage specs. They could be around, how do I add analytics to a project in my specific organization, right? How do we run a security scan over here and fix the vulnerabilities? Which logger should I use? Like, all of those might be things that the agent can intuit or make up, but what it would make up is going to be inconsistent and oftentimes incorrect. So you need to get the right information to it, and you're right. And you want this information to always be available for this project, and you want it to be cross-agent as your team changes and moves agents over time. Yeah. So right now, use it to make your agent use open source better. And over time, start thinking about what would you publish into this registry and what else would you like to find there to consume.
So the Tessl Framework, the Tessl Spec Registry, Guy, shut up and take my money. I can use all of this today, right now, right? If I go to Tessl.io.
So almost. So the Tessl Spec Registry is now available in open beta. So you can go to Tessl.io, and with a couple of clicks, you can get it installed and integrated on your agent environment and start using it right away. And we'd love for you to try that and to send us feedback to build it out. The Tessl Framework is still released in a controlled beta. So you can find,
Why, guy?
Why? So the development framework has a lot of moving parts, and there are many, many, many ways that you can use it. Today there's just a lot of freedom, and we feel like there are too many opportunities for users to shoot themselves in the foot. And so we are making it available in a controlled beta. It's still like a large scale controlled beta. And we want to just evolve the onboarding experience, the right guardrails, the right learnings, so that not everybody sort of shaves on the same practice. We think in general, creating the right spec-driven development methodology is not something we've just solved. We are launching a version of that, and we want to iterate on it with the world, with the community. And so we'd love for you to register and request access. And we intend to give many people access as we learn, but we're just going to throttle that or sort of stagger that a little bit so that not everybody encounters the same problems. And as we improve, we hope fairly quickly to get to something that is an open beta. And then eventually we'll take your money.
Awesome. So right now, if you go to Tessl.io, you can have access to the spec registry, Tessl Spec Registry.
Correct.
Open beta. The Tessl Framework is being opened up to many more people on a throttled beta, and you can sign up to the waiting list for that.
Yep.
One of the interesting things, which kind of like me and the team are doing here at Tessl as well, is we're opening up. We're not trying to keep everything hidden. We're opening up much more of our docs, so you can see how you can use the Tessl Framework even if you don't have access today. There's a bunch of videos on Tessl.io to be able to see the Tessl Framework in action.
Exactly.
And so you can see exactly what we're talking about here. Yeah. And in fact, going forward, why don't I bring Macy on again? Do you remember Macy Baker? For those who watched
she's amazing.
A few episodes.
I definitely want her on the show much more than me.
Let's get some demos going, and we'll show you the framework in action as well.
This is a part of what makes today special for us, is this big unveiling. There are many thoughts, like a long process to get to this situation. So we're happy to build in public, even as we slightly control access to just sort of help it all go smoothly.
Yeah, and the best way to build in public, of course, is to get user and community feedback. The best way to do that, join us on Discord. Links will be in the show notes. Our Discord server. There's Tessl channels, a couple of Tessl channels now in the AI native dev community. So join that. Tell us what you're using there, and you'll be joined to the correct roles and the correct channels where you can discuss both about the spec registry as well as the Tessl Framework.
Yeah, and indeed, we're seeking a lot of feedback, and there's a chance that if you're a valuable feedback provider, even if it's critical feedback on it, maybe you also get bumped up the waitlist for the
it's a popularity contest, is it? I see.
It's a usefulness.
It's a usefulness contest. Excellent. So you talked about the story a little bit about what we've been through. Tessl's obviously not a fresh company. It's been around for over a year now. I remember the episode that we did with 125 mil of funding and things like that. It's an established company. Tell us a little bit about the journey that Tessl has been through to get to this point to where we are today.
So first of all, I think the company is over almost a year and a half old, and consistently we have believed that spec-centric software is the future. And many of the core concepts of how we imagined spec-centric software, sort of spec-driven development, to look like are actually the same, surprisingly the same. But we also knew that we're anchored in the future and that the LLMs can't quite do it today. And so we went through sort of, I'd say maybe a couple of chapters over almost a year. At first, it's kind of the naivety phase. And so we could imagine it. And so we said, fine, let's build a spec-driven development platform that allows you to create in this sort of webbish environment software through specs. And we really were very bullish in what can we do in a period of time. And that took maybe 6 months to get a better appreciation of the level of capability of LLMs at the time, and understand that there's still a bit of a journey to be able to deliver. So we were to deliver that, and so we were left with a lot of ideas about what's the correct destination, but it was just a bit too much. And then we switched to a more kind of controlled environment in which you could create software components through a very controlled web-based development path. And we indeed managed to build something that matches the capabilities of the LLM. So you could create software libraries with Tessl in a spec-driven fashion, in a next experience. And users were quite interested in that. but it was too narrow and too big a change.
It's quite opinionated as well. I remember when we were building that, it took us through a number of stages as well, where you need to be in this stage first, then you go to the code gen, then you go to the test, then you export and publish, and blah, blah, blah. And we went through a number of changes even there, just working out if it's linear, do users want to jump through various stages. It's a complex thing.
Part of the reason that we went through that is because the LLMs were just not good enough. And so we needed to kind of hold their hand and be very specific. But eventually the product we ended up with was not worth the leap. It was too narrow and too different. And so you couldn't really develop software in this fashion. And so in the last chapter, which is, the one that I feel like we've hit the mark. First of all, we said, hey, we need to abandon this sort of closed web-based controlled environment and embrace the roots of local, file-based, very open and tinkerable development environment and the CLI. And then agents came along. And I think agents were key in two ways. In part is because of the capability. So they unlock an ability for AI to generate a lot more. And we have been building basically a version of an agent in the previous iterations of it. But there was clearly a lot more, and especially with Claude Code and the terminal-based approach, there was a lot more that they can do. But more importantly, it surfaced an immediate version of the pain that we're addressing. And so we, from the beginning, said, the pain we're addressing is this sort of big pain of software development. You develop software, and over time you forget what the software is meant to do, and you're just left with the code. And then over years, that problem manifests, and software becomes fragile because you forget what it was. Agents is like a microcosmos of that, right? They've got amnesia, right? You tell them to do something today, and the next day they forget it. They don't remember it anymore. Nobody has knowledge of the code, because they've written it, and so nobody understands the code or any meaning that is within it. And you're really face first with the problem that the code just doesn't have enough information, and then they have all these other symptoms that are like in software development. Sometimes they misunderstand you, just like developers might, but it's a faster iteration, and therefore they build the wrong thing, and that fixing problems after the fact is harder. And a great developer today, you come and you tell them, hey, I need this change in the system. They will stop and say, okay, what's the product impact? What are the use cases that you're trying to satisfy so I can prioritize my work accordingly? And so to an extent, that's what we're doing to the agents. We're trying to make them do that. So I think it is very kind of invigorating, and it's like it just feels a lot better to say, okay, we remain true to this vision of spec-driven development. And again, a lot of the concepts are the same ones that we've been iterating on for a year and a half now. But we now have a real user with a real pain that is incremental that we can build with, that we can make that user successful at using agents better. And so I think this is the chapter that we're in. And I've sort of been saying, like, we knew the destination, but now we found the trailhead. We were sort of wandering this path and saying, okay, fine, but where does the path start? And now we find the trailhead, and now we run.
I think it's amazing how this is the first time I personally have joined you or anyone on a journey so early in a startup stage. And I think one thing that I think is quite amazing is how startups can so quickly pivot and say, look, this isn't the way, this is the way, this isn't the way, this is the way, and recognize that based on the changes that have happened in the industry, and of course AI, nothing's changed the industry so much as AI in as many months, but yeah, it's that bravery and courage to be able to say, actually, look, this is the change here. We're not going to continue on this path. The way in which we tackle them, the way in which our users are using technology today changes our approach, and the change, the path changes quite significantly.
It does. And that's actually also probably the bit that I think is most critical and that I'm most proud of the team for doing is really this adaptability, right? Like we have a great team here. It's not a small team now. We're sort of 37 people, I think now. And, it's a lot of people. They've written a lot of code, which they've subsequently deleted, sometimes because we've shifted and we're in this chapter, sometimes because new evolutions with LLMs have kind of rendered it unnecessary. And that's not easy. It's easy to get attached to the thing that you're building. It's easy to to sort of stick to a path. What do you mean? Like I've built this and I'm kind of passionate about this creation that I have. And I think our team is very focused on, we understand this vision, we want to bring it to life, and we're trying to provide value to users. In fact, probably the biggest complaint, amidst the teams is like, we want more users because everybody's so attuned to say, okay, like I want to show this to more and more users. Now, of course, we've had users all along, but not in vast quantities as we're sort of exploring the way. And so everybody's very keen to doing it, but super proud of the team for being willing to sort of, throw away, past work if it is not the right path forward, for being kind of no ego and aligning with the group, because we're sort of a larger group now, and coming along as we make changes in the sort of nebulous potential paths, and I guess most immediately in rallying towards this launch. There's like a lot of work got done over the last few weeks, and I think now we get the best opportunity of letting the team shine, which is engaging with users, responding to problems, and continuing to build with sort of the speed that we have here.
Yeah, it's amazing, and of course, that whole team is ready to now engage and chat much more publicly than ever before on the Discord. So this pretty much wraps it up. Extremely exciting news, and amazing to be able to share this with the broader audience.
Yeah.
And Guy, you'll be on Discord just as everyone will.
I'll be on Discord. I'm probably not the smartest person for you to sort of engage with to sort of solve problems there. But if you want some sort of philosophical ramble, I'll be there. And we do look forward to having all of you join us on the Discord and engage in this journey. Again, we're not claiming to have solved spec-driven development. We understand these things take iteration. And we're here to iterate and fix problems that you encounter, hear needs that you have that we've not yet solved. And so very, very keen for you to try it out, both the spec registry and the framework, and to tell us what you think, and just stay engaged in the community as we make more and more kind of concepts of this journey available.
Absolutely. So Tessl.io, you can use the spec registry right now. Tell us what you think on Discord. And of course, sign up for the Tessl Framework throttled beta program as well. We'd love to get your feedback on that. Once again, Guy, really appreciate this chat. It's great to be here in person again.
Indeed. Exciting time. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
And now the fun part begins.
Thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.